I never thought this day would come. I never imagined that after 20 years of marriage, the person I trusted most in the world would turn around and file for divorce. My name is Vanessa Harper, and for 2 decades, I dedicated my life to keeping my family together, raising our kids, managing the household, and supporting Richard in every way possible. I thought I was loved. I thought I mattered. I was wrong. It started like any other Monday morning. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, the kids were grumbling about school, and Richard was scrolling through his phone at the counter, acting distant. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to work stress. But there was a tension in the air I couldn't shake, something heavier than usual. "Vanessa," he said finally, looking up from his phone. His eyes were cold, unreadable. "We need to talk." I froze. His tone was different, too calm, too precise. My stomach sank. "What about?" I asked cautiously, trying not to let my fear show. He hesitated for a moment, which only made my anxiety grow. I'm filing for divorce," he said almost casually, like he was ordering a coffee instead of ending a 20-year marriage. I stared at him, mouth dry. My hands shook as I dropped the mug I was holding. Coffee spilled across the counter. "What? Why? After all these years? We've been through so much together." My voice cracked. Is this because of me?" Richard shook his head slowly, avoiding my gaze. "No, it's not about blame. We've just grown apart. You've changed. I've changed. It's time." Time? 20 years of building a life together? Of sacrifices I didn't even count? And it came down to time? I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something. But I didn't. I wanted answers, and he wasn't giving any. The kids, Sophie and Max, were hovering nearby. They had overheard. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with confusion. Sophie's hand went to her mouth, and Max looked like he wanted to fight someone, anyone. I had to stay strong, for them. "I'll figure it out," I said quietly, my voice trembling but firm. "But you don't just decide to erase 20 years of family with a signature on a piece of paper." Richard didn't answer. He just left the kitchen, leaving me standing there with the coffee slowly soaking into the counter, and my heart breaking in ways I didn't know were possible. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about every moment of our life together, how I had supported him through promotions, worked overtime to keep the house running, planned every birthday, every vacation. And now, he was walking away. The next day, I went through our emails and bills, anything to find a clue as to why he was doing this. At first, there was nothing. But then I noticed it. A credit card statement with charges I didn't recognize. Expensive dinners at hotels, gifts with names I didn't know. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't just about growing apart. And that's when I realized I had been blind for 20 years. I had no idea the person I married was capable of this. I knew right then that this was just the beginning. Whatever came next, I couldn't let him walk away unscathed. I couldn't let him think he could destroy my life without consequences. But I didn't realize that was just the beginning of the nightmare. I couldn't believe it. My hands were shaking as I stared at the credit card statement again, the numbers and names blurring before my eyes. Expensive dinners, weekend getaways, little gifts, things I had never received or been told about. Someone else was part of my life now. I tried to convince myself it was a mistake, maybe a business expense. But deep down, I knew better. I could feel it in my bones. Richard had lied to me. All those years of smiles, the nights I stayed up worrying about bills, the sacrifices I made, It had all been built on a lie. That night, I sat on the couch after the kids had gone to bed, scrolling through my phone. I needed answers, and I had to be careful. If he suspected I was onto him, he would cover his tracks. My mind raced through every dinner, every business trip, every late-night call. Patterns I ignored suddenly became glaringly obvious. The next morning, I confronted him subtly. "Richard," I said, as casually as I could manage, while making breakfast, "I noticed a few charges on the card. Do you want to explain them?" He looked at me, expression neutral. "Oh, that? It's nothing. Just work stuff." Work stuff. Always work stuff. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside, something shifted. I realized I couldn't rely on him to tell the truth. I had to find out for myself. Over the next few days, I started quietly digging. I checked emails he left open on his laptop, old receipts tucked in drawers, and even his phone messages when he was in the shower. Every secret he tried to hide was there, waiting for me. And I found it. Messages, flirty, inappropriate, exchanged with a woman I had never met. Names, places, and times, hotel stays, romantic dinners. It was worse than I imagined. I felt rage boiling inside me, a fire I had not known I was capable of. But anger alone wasn't enough. I needed a plan. I couldn't let this destroy me, and I certainly couldn't let him think he could get away with it. Then came the next shock. While digging through his emails, I noticed transfers from our joint account to another account, an account I had never been told about. Thousands of dollars moving silently, systematically. He had been hiding money from me, from our children, from our family. I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about divorce. This was about control, about making sure that when he walked away, I would be powerless. He wanted to leave me broken. I spent that night pacing the house, formulating what I could do. I couldn't confront him directly, not yet. He was clever, manipulative, and he thrived on chaos. I needed to be smarter. I needed to gather every shred of proof I could find. Everything he had done behind my back. Only then could I strike back. The kids didn't know yet, but I could see the tension in their eyes. Sophie had noticed his distance, his coldness. Max had started acting out, frustrated by the silent arguments he could feel but not understand. I couldn't let this poison them. I had to protect them even as I prepared for the reckoning that was coming. That's when I realized the first clue, the first piece of the puzzle that would fuel my revenge. Richard thought he was untouchable. He thought his lies were safe. He had no idea I was about to change everything. And I knew with chilling clarity that nothing would ever be the same again. I couldn't sleep for nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Richard with that other woman, laughing, dining, living a life I had thought was ours. I kept asking myself how I hadn't noticed sooner. How could I have been so blind for 20 years? But anger alone wouldn't fix anything. I had to see it, confirm it, document it. So I started quietly following the breadcrumbs. Hotel names from the statements, restaurant addresses from the emails, little hints Richard thought he had erased or hidden. Each one was a thread, and I began weaving them into a pattern I could understand. The first undeniable proof came when I accessed a shared cloud folder he used for work. There they were, photos he thought I'd never see. Him holding hands with her, laughing, selfies from hotel rooms. And it wasn't just once. It had been going on for months, maybe years. My stomach twisted, my heart raced. I felt sick, but I also felt alive. Alive with a need for justice. I didn't confront him yet. I had to be careful. Revenge isn't about blind rage, it's about strategy. I went to my best friend, Clara, for advice. She was practical, sharp, and fiercely loyal. "Vanessa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I wanted to scream. "He's been cheating. And not just emotionally, financially too. And I think he's planning to leave me with nothing." Clara's eyes widened. "Do you have proof?" "Yes," I whispered, showing her the photos and the statements. "All of it. But I need to plan. I can't just explode at him. I need to hit him where it hurts, where it counts." She nodded slowly. "Then you need to gather everything. Every message, every transfer, every slip-up. Once you have it all, you control the narrative. He won't know what hit him." I started documenting everything, meticulously. Screenshots, emails, photos, even voice memos. Every piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was going to build around him. And as I did, I began feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. But the deeper I dug, the more shocking things became. I discovered multiple affairs, not just one. Names I didn't recognize, dates that overlapped, hotel bookings that couldn't be explained by work. And then I found something else, something he had done right under my nose. A series of legal documents that could leave me completely vulnerable if I didn't act fast. He had been planning to cut me out financially, to take the house, the savings, everything. I realized in that moment that this man I had loved, trusted, and sacrificed for was a master manipulator. He thought he could destroy me quietly while he walked away with everything he wanted. He didn't know I was ready to fight back. Not with anger, not with tears, but with strategy. And as I closed my laptop that night, heart pounding, I whispered to myself, "He has no idea what's coming. He thinks he's winning. He's about to learn the hardest lesson of his life." Little did I know, the deeper I went, the more secrets I would uncover, and some of them were far darker than even I could imagine. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Every decision from here on mattered. I couldn't let my anger make me reckless. I had to play smart, because Richard wasn't just emotionally distant, he was dangerous in his arrogance. I started with the finances. I went through every account, every investment, every bill. That's when I discovered it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars quietly siphoned into accounts I had never heard of. Retirement savings, joint investments, even money meant for the kids' college funds. He had been planning this for years. He wanted to leave me with nothing. My throat tightened, but I swallowed hard. I couldn't let him see me crumble. Then came the subtle, insidious part, the way he tried to manipulate the kids. Sophie was quiet, withdrawn. Max was acting out, snapping at the smallest things. Richard thought he could turn them against me, make them doubt me. One evening, I overheard him telling Max, "Sometimes adults make mistakes. You just have to accept things." I could feel my blood boil. He was planting seeds of doubt, trying to isolate me from the children I had spent 20 years raising. I realized then that this wasn't just about Richard leaving. This was a full-scale attack on everything I cared about, my home, my finances, my children. And if I didn't fight back strategically, I would lose it all. So I made a decision. I would stay calm, I would stay composed, and I would gather every piece of evidence I could find. Every conversation, every secret transaction, every betrayal. I became almost invisible in my determination, moving silently while Richard thought he was still in control. I started paying attention to the smallest details, the way he answered phone calls, the names in his emails, even the time he left the house. Every slip,
Every careless mistake, I filed it away mentally and digitally. And with every discovery, my plan for revenge grew clearer. But just when I thought I had seen the worst of it, I stumbled onto something I hadn't expected. A carefully hidden folder on his computer labeled "For Emergencies." Inside were contracts, hotel bookings, and even emails between him and someone in his law firm discussing how to keep me from getting any financial settlement. My hands shook as I scrolled through them. He had plotted this meticulously. He thought he was untouchable. That night, I sat alone in the living room, children asleep upstairs, staring at the evidence in disbelief. I had all I needed to fight back. Every betrayal, every lie, every secret plan he had was mine now. I could ruin him if I wanted, and I was going to. But even as I planned, I felt a chill. Revenge is dangerous. It can consume you if you're not careful. I reminded myself I wasn't doing this for anger alone. I was doing this for justice, for my children, for the life he thought he could destroy. And in that moment, I realized something else. Richard's arrogance would be his downfall. He underestimated me, and that mistake would cost him everything. I didn't know exactly how. Not yet, but I knew the next move would be mine. And when it came, he would wish he had never underestimated the woman he thought he could discard. Little did he know, the storm was already gathering. By now, I knew I had to act with precision. This wasn't just about exposing him. It was about making sure he felt the weight of every betrayal without ever giving him the chance to retaliate. I wasn't going to scream or throw tantrums. I was going to be patient, calculated, and lethal in my strategy. The first step was gathering undeniable evidence. I installed a hidden voice recorder in the office he used at home. Every phone call, every conversation, every hint of deceit would be captured. I spent hours thinking about what I needed, what would hurt him the most. It wasn't just the affairs or the money. It was the exposure, the humiliation, the realization that he wasn't in control anymore. At night, after the kids were asleep, I would replay the recordings, taking notes, analyzing every word. There was the way he laughed with those other women, how he planned to manipulate lawyers, how he casually disregarded the life we had built together. Every detail fueled my resolve. Every lie became a weapon. But revenge isn't just about evidence, it's about timing. I watched him carefully, noting his routines, the moments he let himself down. There was a dangerous arrogance in him, a belief that he could manipulate everyone, including me. He didn't know that while he plotted to leave, I was plotting a reckoning that would change everything.
One evening, he tried to corner me in the kitchen. "Vanessa, you need to accept that this is over. I'm moving on, and you need to let go," he said, voice smooth, calculated. I smiled softly, a mask of calm. "You know, Richard, letting go is easier when you know the truth. And soon, everyone will." He blinked, startled by my composure. I could see a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a tiny crack in the armor he always wore. That was all I needed. That tiny crack would grow into a chasm. Over the next few weeks, I became invisible in plain sight. I went through the motions of a wife facing divorce, polite, calm, composed, while secretly building my arsenal. Every document, every recording, every hidden email became part of a dossier that would not only protect me, but destroy him. And then, one night, I found something that made my blood run cold. A final piece of the puzzle I hadn't expected. hidden deep in his files was a contract that would allow him to take the house outright, leaving me and the kids with nothing. He had planned this meticulously, thinking he was clever, thinking I would never find out. I stared at the screen, heart racing, a cold fury settling in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal, this was war. And I was ready. I whispered to myself in the darkness, "You thought you could walk away unscathed, Richard? You thought I was blind and weak? You were wrong. I had the proof, I had the plan, and I had the patience. And most importantly, I had the moral high ground. He might have been underestimating me, but he wouldn't be for long. Little did he know, the next time we spoke, nothing would ever be the same. And the first move of my revenge was already in motion. The day I decided to take action, I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. For 20 years, I had lived in his shadow, polite, obedient, loyal. But now, for the first time in decades, I felt power in my own hands. Every document, every recording, every secret he thought was safe, it was mine, and I was ready to use it. I started small, testing the waters. A few carefully chosen friends and family members began to notice subtle changes. I would drop hints about Richard's strange behavior, never outright accusing him, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. People started asking questions. I could see his arrogance wobbling slightly. That tiny crack I had spotted weeks ago was widening. But the real shock came when I uncovered something I hadn't expected, something that changed everything. While reviewing a folder labeled business deals, I stumbled upon correspondence between Richard and a close family friend. They had been conspiring to hide assets and even manipulate the kids' inheritance without me knowing. Someone I trusted, someone I considered loyal, had been colluding with him all along. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Betrayal upon betrayal. My husband, my supposed allies, they had underestimated me completely. And that, I realized, was their biggest mistake. I started planning the next phase. I would confront him indirectly, make sure the right people knew what he had done, and expose him systematically. Every lie, every deceit, every hidden financial maneuver would come to light, and all of it would leave him defenseless. Richard, oblivious as ever, continued to act like the powerful man he thought he was. He was so confident in his plans that he didn't notice me documenting every phone call, every meeting, every lie. I had become the invisible observer, patient and calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One evening, I overheard him talking on the phone, his tone smug, certain. By the time she finds out, it'll be too late. Everything will be mine. I smiled quietly to myself. Not if I have anything to say about it, I whispered under my breath. I knew exactly what I had to do. The next day, I started contacting the people who could help me, lawyers, old friends, even some of Richard's colleagues. I framed everything carefully, not accusations, just questions, careful observations. Slowly, the walls he had built around himself began to crack. People started noticing inconsistencies, strange behavior, small hints that something was amiss, and Richard, in his arrogance, didn't even see it coming. But the most shocking discovery was still ahead. Buried under months of files, I found a secret he had never intended me to see, a betrayal so deep, so personal that it shook me to my core. Someone close to me, someone I had trusted implicitly, had helped him plan the ultimate betrayal. I couldn't believe it. For a moment, I felt a wave of despair, but then I remembered, despair is weakness. I had power, and I would use it. I clenched my fists and whispered, "You think you've won, Richard. You think I'm helpless. You have no idea what's coming." And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to destroy him, piece by piece, until he understood exactly what betrayal feels like. Little did he know, his carefully constructed world was about to collapse, and I was holding the match. It was finally time. The patience, the planning, the silent observations all led to this moment. I could feel my pulse quicken, but I kept my face calm, composed. Richard had no idea what I had uncovered, no idea how carefully I had orchestrated everything. I invited him to the house one evening, pretending to be polite, neutral, even conciliatory. The kids were at a friend's house. It was just the two of us, and the perfect setting for the first confrontation. "Vanessa," he said, leaning back in the chair, a smug smile on his face. "I see you've been busy." I smiled softly. "You could say that." I placed a folder on the table between us, thick, heavy, full of documents, emails, recordings. "Do you want to go through this together?" He laughed lightly, dismissively. "What's this? More of your paranoia?" I didn't flinch. "Call it what you want. But these aren't suspicions, Richard. These are facts. Your affairs, the secret accounts, the plans to cut me out of everything. Everything you thought I wouldn't find, I found. And now everyone else will too." His smile faltered slightly, a flicker of fear crossing his features. "Vanessa, this is insane. You can't—" I cut him off. "Watch me." I started going through the folder piece by piece, the recordings of his conversations with the other women, screenshots of messages, the financial transfers, the contracts he had hidden. Every time I laid out a new piece of evidence, I could see him shrinking slightly, realizing that he had underestimated me for 20 years. You've been keeping all of this?" he whispered, his voice tight, defensive. "I've been watching, listening, documenting. You thought you could walk away with everything while I was blind. You were wrong," I said, my voice steady but filled with controlled fury. "And now everyone you relied on, everyone you thought was loyal to you, they're going to see the real Richard Harper."
His arrogance was cracking. He was panicked, trying to think of a way out, but there was none. The evidence was irrefutable, damning, and I could see the terror in his eyes. The first time in years I had ever felt any real power over him. I paused, letting the weight of everything sink in. "You underestimated me. You underestimated my patience, my intelligence, my resolve. And now, you're going to learn what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you thought you controlled." Richard opened his mouth, but no words came. He realized, too late, that the game was over. I had taken control. I wasn't just fighting back, I was winning. And as I watched him struggle to comprehend what was happening, I knew that this was only the beginning. There were still people to tell, people who needed to see the truth. There were still consequences he had to face. And when it was all over, he would remember this moment, the moment he realized that Vanessa Harper was no longer the woman he could manipulate, silence, or betray. Little did he know, I had one final move left, a move that would be his ultimate downfall, a revelation so shocking it would leave him reeling. After that confrontation, I watched him closely. The arrogance he carried for 20 years was crumbling, piece by piece. Richard didn't just lose control over me, he was losing control over everything he thought defined him. His reputation, his career, his friends. It started subtly at first. A colleague he had always considered loyal mentioned something in passing. Odd glances, whispered questions. Then an old friend called me, hesitating before revealing that Richard had been bragging about financial maneuvers that could now be interpreted as fraud. I stayed calm, letting the dominoes fall. He tried to maintain appearances, of course. Richard thought if he smiled, if he kept his confident tone, if he acted like nothing was wrong, the world wouldn't notice. But the truth has a way of surfacing, and I had made sure it would. One afternoon, I received a call from his firm. I had discreetly reached out to someone I knew inside just to hint that Richard's secrets were no longer hidden. The reaction on the other end of the line was priceless, a mixture of disbelief, panic, and quiet fury directed at him. By the next week, rumors had spread. His reputation was cracking. Meanwhile, friends and family began questioning him. His lies, his manipulations, the countless small betrayals, all of it was now exposed to the right people. He tried to push back, deny everything, but each attempt only dug the hole deeper. He was no longer in control. I was. At home, I watched the changes in his demeanor. The confidence that once filled the room was gone. He walked softly, avoided eye contact, and every glance at me was heavy with suspicion. Richard knew the walls were closing in, but he didn't know when or how they would fall completely. Then came the next wave. His colleagues, those who had once admired him, started to distance themselves. Invitations to meetings dwindled. Friends stopped returning calls. His social circle, the one he had relied on for validation and support, began to shrink. And the irony wasn't lost on me. The same people he had manipulated, lied to, and used for his gain were now turning their backs on him. I could see the panic rising. He tried to maintain appearances for the kids, but Sophie and Max were beginning to notice. Max asked questions that Richard couldn't answer. Questions he didn't want to face. Sophie's subtle glances told me she was finally seeing him for who he truly was. And through it all, I remained calm, composed, untouchable. My patience, my strategy, my careful planning had created a perfect storm. Richard was losing the battle on every front, professionally, socially, and emotionally. I leaned back in my chair one evening, sipping my coffee as I watched him pace the living room. He was frantic, desperate, trying to figure out how to regain control. But I already knew the truth. The game was over. He had been undone by his own arrogance, his own betrayal, and the woman he thought he could discard. And yet the final move, the one that would completely shatter his world, was still ahead. He didn't know it, but I had one last revelation prepared, one final blow. And when it landed, he would understand fully what it meant to be truly powerless. Little did he know, his life was about to unravel completely, and nothing would ever be the same again. Richard was desperate now. I could see it in the way he moved, hurried, anxious, constantly checking his phone, nervously pacing the house. He realized he had lost control, and the truth of his deceit was starting to hit every corner of his carefully constructed life. But he was still dangerous, arrogant enough to think he could make one last move to save himself. I anticipated it. I knew him better than anyone, and I knew his pattern. When cornered, he acted recklessly. So I prepared. I had documented every conversation, every email, every financial maneuver. I had witnesses who could confirm everything if needed. I wasn't just ready, I was untouchable. One evening, he tried it. He came into the living room, suit crisp, eyes calculating. "Vanessa, we need to talk," he said, tone sharp, almost pleading. I knew what he was attempting. He was going to beg, charm, manipulate, or threaten. But I was ready. "Talk?" I echoed, voice calm, almost gentle. "Richard, we've already talked. I've shown you the truth. You know what everyone knows now." His face twisted, a mix of frustration and fear. I leaned forward, placing my hand over the folder of evidence I had prepared, the final proof of every betrayal, every lie, every secret you thought was safe, every plan you made to leave me powerless, exposed. His hand shook slightly. "Vanessa, you can't." "I can," I said, cutting him off. "And I will. You've destroyed our marriage, tried to manipulate our children, hidden money, lied to everyone. But now it's your turn to see what it feels like to be powerless. And believe me, Richard, it's not a pleasant feeling." He tried to argue, tried to negotiate, but I was ready for him.
I had anticipated every move, every excuse, every tactic he might use. And when he realized I had thought of it all, I saw the final, crushing look of defeat in his eyes. The first time he had ever felt truly outmaneuvered in his life. The children returned home that evening. Sophie and Max watched quietly as Richard's mask of confidence completely crumbled. For the first time, they saw their father for who he truly was. I felt a wave of vindication and relief. Justice in its most personal form had arrived. And just when I thought it was over, I delivered the final blow. A revelation so devastating that it would leave him reeling for months to come. I had saved the most poetic, most karmic piece of evidence for last, something that would ensure he never recovered, not socially, not financially, not emotionally.
Little did he know, the ultimate betrayal was coming, and when it landed, there would be no way back. The days that followed felt surreal. Richard was no longer the man I had married, or the man I had lived under for 20 years. He moved through the house like a ghost, quiet, tense, uncertain. Every glance he threw my way was laced with fear and regret, and I, for the first time in decades, felt free. But freedom alone wasn't enough. I had to rebuild, protect my children, and reclaim the life he had tried to steal. Sophie and Max needed stability, reassurance, and a reminder that the woman they loved, their mother, was strong and capable of standing up for them. I began focusing on them, on our home, on the life we had built together before the cracks appeared. Simple routines, family dinners, movie nights, weekend outings became rituals of healing, and with each smile, each shared laugh, I felt my strength returning. Meanwhile, Richard's world continued to unravel. His colleagues had seen the evidence. Friends and acquaintances whispered behind his back. Even distant family members had begun questioning his integrity. The arrogance that had defined him for decades was gone, replaced by a hollow, cautious man who had underestimated the woman he once called his wife. And then, it was time for the final revelation, the ultimate betrayal. The gift I had been planning. I invited him to the lawyer's office under the pretense of finalizing divorce papers. The kids were safely at a friend's sleepover, the house quiet, the tension thick. "Vanessa, what is this?" he asked nervously as I handed the folder over. I smiled, a calm, confident smile. "This, Richard, is everything. All the evidence, all the proofs, all the lies. And here's the part you never saw coming." I watched his face pale as he realized what the folder contained, legal protections that would ensure he would never touch the house, the savings, or the kids' inheritance, documentation exposing his affairs, the secret accounts, and the manipulations, and worst of all, the compiled records of every lie he had told, every secret he had kept, now delivered to the lawyer and several key allies. You can't," he stammered, panic in his eyes. "Oh, I can. And I have.